They called it Tiros 7. Population, 86,421. Now, a graveyard spinning in silence. At first, Earth's politicians scrambled for answers, but there was none. No declaration of war, no warnings, no demands, just slaughter. Whoever ordered the strike didn't want territory. They wanted to send a message, and we got it. But Earth doesn't play silent victim. Not anymore. The man watching the footage for the 27th time that week sat in a dark room inside a command carrier buried deep beneath Iceland's surface. No rank on his collar, no insignia, just a name. Thorn. He didn't flinch when the images repeated. He didn't weep when the screen showed scorched bodies lined up in shattered streets. He just stared, jaw clenched tight enough to crack molars. The blood on that colony included his younger brother, a civilian tech engineer who moved to Tiros 7 to escape war. Not find it. The door behind him hissed open. A sharp voice broke the silence. "Sir, they've convened the assembly. They're calling it a tragedy. They want restraint." Thorn didn't turn around. "Restraint? They butchered children, Commander." "I know." He stood slowly, walking over to a small case mounted on the wall. He opened it, revealing a curved metal device, a key, forged in tungsten steel and laced with biometric locks. It hadn't been used in 73 years. Earth hadn't launched a full military offensive since the Orion conflicts. Humanity had learned to keep to itself, trading with other species, building quiet, isolated colonies. Peaceful. Dull. But Tiros 7 changed everything. Thorn took the key in both hands and pressed it to the panel. "Confirm identity," the AI voice hummed. "Fleet Admiral Thorn, authorization Vulcan Protocol 010, he growled. A pause. Then a click. Lights turned red. Alarms remained silent. But inside Earth's war core, the ancient engines of vengeance spun to life again. Far above, in orbit, the EMS Leviathan, Earth's flagship dreadnought, began transmitting coded pulses across the Sol defense grid. Shipyards from Jupiter's moons to Titan's forges responded instantly. The order was simple. Activate the fleet. Within hours, production lines started rolling, dormant for decades. Cryovaults were opened. Generals pulled from retirement, some too old to walk, but all willing to fight. Earth's old war machine, scarred and feared, had been waiting for something like this. By the end of the second day, 312 dreadnoughts had already left Earth orbit. Their destination? The Dryan Expanse. Their message? Vengeance. But Earth wasn't just sending ships. No, this time it was sending a legacy. A reminder. Thorn stood in front of the Leviathan's core deck, staring at the star map lighting up with enemy territories. "We don't know which species hit us," his tactical officer muttered. "We don't even know if it was official military or rogue mercs." Thorn's gaze didn't waver. "I don't care," he replied. "They flew ships. They carried weapons. They made a choice." He looked around at his crew, most of them young, born after the wars, raised in peaceful stations. That peace had made them soft, yes, but Tiros 7 hardened them overnight. "When we arrive," he continued, "I don't want prisoners. I want signals, loud ones, the kind that echo across galaxies." "Sir," the officer asked hesitantly, "how many ships are we building?" Thorn narrowed his eyes at the map. "All of them." Silence spread across the Leviathan's war room like a fog before the storm. Outside its armored hull, stars drifted quietly, distant, innocent spectators to the fury rising in Earth's heart. The ship vibrated with power as its reactors went from dormant to full operational, humming with restrained violence. Thorn stood at the center of it all, hands behind his back, as the wall-length holograms lit up with the latest fleet status. Dreadnought construction now at 14,000 and rising. Mars dry docks are working triple shifts. AI fabrication centers on Europa report 0 downtime, a young comms officer said, barely masking the edge in his voice. He had no rank during peace, just an analyst. But war changed everything. The crew was no longer labeled by desk work or seniority. Now the only thing that mattered was resolve. Thorne nodded. How soon till the fleet hits combat numbers? Less than 12 days, sir. 12 days to build 500,000 dreadnoughts. Impossible, unless you were Earth. The AI factories hadn't forgotten the old codes. They'd just been waiting. In their cores, the patterns for dreadnought-class vessels had always been there, frozen, encrypted, guarded from bureaucratic hands. Earth had feared what might happen if those blueprints ever fell into the wrong hands. Now, they were in the right ones. On day 5, the Leviathan reached the Dryan Expanse. The closer they got to Tiros 7, the worse it smelled, even in space. Not literal scent, but the kind of silence that carried weight. Radio static filled the void. No civilian chatter, no merchant signals, no survivors, just echoes bouncing off burnt rock. They'd cleaned it. Whoever hit the colony didn't just burn it, they sterilized it. Every relay destroyed, every sensor gutted. Orbiting satellites vaporized in tight, precise lines. Someone had experience, and they wanted to hide something. The Leviathan sent out its first scouting wing, 2 heavy corvettes and a stealth drone grid. It took 5 hours before a corvette, the Eagle's Wrath, pinged something unusual. A radiation signature beneath Tiros 7's crust. Not natural, not Terran tech. Thorne watched from orbit as the corvette drilled down with its plasma cutters. Slowly, cautiously, it melted through layers of shattered bedrock. Then they saw it. Beneath the surface was a massive underground facility, half collapsed, partially shielded. Whoever the attackers were, they hadn't built this. They'd found it. "Get me eyes inside," Thorne ordered. The drone footage came in dirty, glitching, but the shapes were clear. Weapons, not Terran, not from any known registered race. Pulsed cannons with spiral cores. Plasma forges the size of dropships. One vault, still intact, was filled with humanoid shells, biomechs, vessels meant to carry non-organic pilots. "Jesus!" muttered one of the engineers watching the feed. "This isn't just a hit. This was a goddamn cover-up." Thorne leaned forward. "Replay the heat map." The AI complied. Heat signatures spiked inside the facility. 89 life forms, faint but moving. They weren't dead. They were hiding. 6 hours later, a shock team deployed from the Leviathan. 50 men in sealed exosuits descended into the ruin, flanked by 2 Goliath walkers. Their orders: no survivors unless interrogatable. No mercy unless deserved. The entrance was tight, dark, and laced with sharp ridges that screamed alien design. As they moved deeper, the air turned viscous, thick with electric static. A soldier named Hardin led point. His voice crackled through the comms. "Movement, Corridor 6. Target appears in sectoid. 1 meter tall, fast, not engaging." "Pursue!" the lieutenant barked. Hardin and his team moved fast. Too fast. Within seconds, the corridor lit up with blue plasma arcs. Screams followed. By the time the walkers arrived, 3 soldiers were down. Hardin's vitals flatlined on the HUD. They returned fire, vaporizing a pack of spindly, multi-limbed creatures in seconds. One survivor was dragged back to the surface. The thing writhed in its restraints, a skeletal figure with stretched skin and blackened eyes, somewhere between flesh and machine. Its voice wasn't vocal. It transmitted pure, cold digital signal. Thorne stood over it in the interrogation chamber. "Why Tiros 7?" he asked flatly. The thing twitched. "Corruption. Silenced," it replied, voice a crackle of feedback. "Experiment? Should not exist." "Who gave the order to strike?" Thorne demanded. The creature spat oil and static. "No order." Cleansing. Thorne's face remained unreadable. He turned away. "Seal the chamber." The guards obeyed. The thing began screeching in garbled binary. Then the door locked shut. And Thorne flooded it with antimatter gas. No trial, no hesitation. By day 7, Earth's fleet had grown tenfold. From Luna to Neptune's ice rings, dreadnoughts rolled off assembly lines. Every ship carried a name, etched in titanium across the hull. Cities that fell, colonies lost, heroes buried without honors. They were not just ships. They were gravestones with engines. Thorne's personal command ship, a newly forged behemoth named the EMS Retribution, stood at the head of the formation. Unlike Leviathan, Retribution didn't carry diplomats or scientists. It was designed for war, nothing more. Inside its briefing chamber, Earth's top military minds gathered. Admiral Boone, scarred from the Orion skirmishes, leaned forward. "We found traces of particle residue matching old Coalition weapons." General Mira, old, sharp, and merciless, snorted. "Coalition denied involvement in Tiros 7. They issued condolences. They're playing politics." Boone stared at the report. But if they knew something was buried under Tiros 7... "Then they allowed the slaughter," Thorne finished. His voice dropped. "Or ordered it." Silence filled the room. A line had been crossed. If the Coalition, or any species within it, sanctioned the cleansing of a human colony to hide secrets, then treaties were meaningless. There was no court to appeal to. No negotiation left to be made. Only war. Day 10. Scouts reached a nearby Coalition outpost, Sereth Prime, located in a dense asteroid field. Neutral zone, supposedly. But the moment Earth's advance fleet came within scanning range, they were fired upon. No warnings, no hails, just plasma and railgun fire. Earth responded in kind. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Sereth Prime was erased. Of Earth's ships, 3 were damaged. No casualties. Of the outpost, nothing remained but a floating memorial of glowing debris. Thorne watched from the Retribution's bridge, unmoved. "They shot first," one officer whispered. "No," Thorne corrected. "Tiros 7 was first." This was just payback. He turned to the navigation AI. "Plot a course to the Council Corps." There was hesitation. The Council Corps wasn't a military base. It was a political sanctuary, a meeting ground where all species gathered, protected by ancient codes of neutrality. No one had ever attacked it in history. "Confirm target?" the AI asked. "Confirmed," Thorne said. A pause. "Firing upon the Council Corps may result in universal war." Thorne's jaw tightened. "It already has." By the end of day 12, Earth's fleet reached full power. 500,000 dreadnoughts, each one a fortress, bristling with world-killer weaponry, crewed by millions of soldiers, ex-Marines, rogue pilots, AI co-pilots, and every fighter Earth could spare. A final broadcast was prepared. Thorne stood before the fleet, broadcasting on all open channels across the galaxy. "This is Fleet Admiral Thorne of the Earth Defense Command." He didn't shout. He didn't rant. His voice was calm, controlled, cold. 16 days ago, the human colony of Tiros 7 was burned to the ground. No warning, no survivors, no claim of responsibility. He paused. Earth asked for answers. None came. We found only silence and deceit. We discovered black sites buried beneath our soil, facilities never meant to be seen. His eyes narrowed. You covered your tracks with fire and screams. Now, we return the favor. He stepped back. All Earth forces are hereby released from all peacetime restrictions. Targets are no longer limited to military installations. Any world harboring knowledge or sheltering those behind Tiros 7 will be treated as complicit. Thorne stared straight into the lens. We are not asking for justice. We are taking it. He ended the broadcast, and across space, the 500,000 dreadnoughts began to move, not as soldiers, but as executioners. They thought Earth would blink. They thought the speeches were just threats, bark without bite. The Galactic Council had seen countless outraged species before, protesters, ambassadors waving ethics charters and empty ultimatums. Even during the Orion riots, humanity had held back, always restrained by politics or fear of annihilation. But this time, the silence from Earth was different. There was no debate in their channels, no pleas for mediation, no representatives begging for fairness. Just that fleet, 500,000 dreadnoughts, burning through the void like a plague in formation. And then came the first strike. The planet was called Jarnus 4, a rich world just inside coalition borders. Population, 3.2 billion. Mostly neutral species, traders, educators. They considered themselves unaffiliated, not fighters, not responsible. They were wrong. Deep under Jarnus 4's university system, Earth's recon AI picked up encrypted archives, hard-proof transmission records traced back to the Tiros 7 massacre. Data showing that Jarnus administrators received warnings days before the colony was hit, and did nothing. They didn't warn Earth. They didn't lift a finger. So Thorne did. The fleet gave them 12 hours. 12 hours to evacuate or surrender the ones responsible. The Jarnissian government responded with a message: we have no part in this war. Thorne replied with 2 words: then you're part of the silence. At hour 13, the first dreadnought salvo was fired. No surgical strikes, no pinpoint bombing, just raw planetary bombardment. Orbital kinetic rods fell from the sky at Mach 30. Cities were vaporized in the first impact wave. Universities turned to craters. AI towers collapsed like dominoes. In 37 minutes, Jarnus 4 ceased to exist. Not one dreadnought was scratched. No fighters were deployed. It wasn't a battle. It was a lesson. The galaxy took notice. The Council finally responded. A formal summons was sent to Earth. Cease hostilities immediately. Return to the negotiation table. Failure to do so will be considered a declaration of war upon all member species. Thorne didn't reply. Instead, he turned to General Mira. Where are the next targets? He asked. She tapped her console. We traced at least 6 species involved in black site operations near Tiros 7, all within coalition territories. One of them, the Valari Ascendancy, had ships near the colony 2 days before it was wiped. Coordinates? Sending them to your display. Thorne stared at the map. Prepare Phase 2. Send the fleet. He paused. And kill the relay networks first. I want them blind before we strike. The Valari Ascendancy was one of the oldest species in the galaxy, all bone-white skin and glowing yellow eyes, cloaked in layers of silk and smug superiority. They'd always viewed humans as newcomers, too emotional, too violent, too primitive. Now, they were running. The moment Earth's fleet warped into Valari space, the Ascendancy activated their planetary shields and began scrambling civilian evac ships. Their grand halls of learning, once filled with philosophical debate about lesser species, turned into bunkers overnight. Valari fleets rose in defense. Their pride refused to let them flee without a fight. Earth didn't give them the chance. The human dreadnoughts used fire formation tactics not seen since the last Great Wars, splitting their battle groups into concentric rings, with AI-controlled flanking maneuvers. The result? Brutality. Valerie ships were sleek, fast, and beautiful, but fragile. Their shielding couldn't handle Earth's hyperkinetic slugs and smart mines. Their plasma beams couldn't pierce dreadnought armor reinforced with neutron-forged alloys. In just 3 hours, the Ascendancy lost 82% of its fleet. Valeri Command sent one final plea. We surrender. Cease fire. Thorn replied, Surrender implies honor. You burned civilians. No honor left. Then he gave the order. Glass it! The bombardment that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Not even during the Trion massacres or the Quasar Wars had a planet been hit with full-force orbital saturation. Not 1 or 2, but over 5,000 dreadnoughts rained hell upon Valor Prime, the Ascendancy's capital world. The planet's crust cracked, its oceans boiled. And when it was over, a once proud civilization had been reduced to ash and regret. Inside the Retribution's war chamber, Thorn watched the after-action reports roll in. 7 worlds in 8 days, Mira said quietly. We've killed over 11 billion. Thorn said nothing. She added, Some will call this genocide. His eyes met hers, calm, cold. It's not genocide when they had a choice, he said. They chose silence. They chose cover-ups. They chose to stand next to monsters. But there were innocents. There were innocents on Tiros 7, too. Silence. You still feel anything, Admiral? She asked after a pause. Guilt? Doubt? Thorn didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small item, a worn-out necklace, just a piece of bent metal on a chain. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. He ran his thumb over the engraving on it. To my big brother? I'll be watching the stars. It was all they recovered of his brother's body. I feel one thing, Thorn finally said. What's that? Clarity. But not everyone on Earth agreed. Back home, protests began to rise. Journalists and dissidents questioned the scale of the retaliation. Public channels filled with whispers, Are we becoming the monsters? How many more must die for vengeance? Is this still justice or is it madness? Thorn didn't care. He wasn't fighting for politics. He wasn't trying to look moral. This wasn't about optics. It was about a line that was crossed and a galaxy that believed humanity would stay leashed. He'd already made the decision. Earth would rather burn the stars than kneel again. On day 17, a captured Coalition frigate leaked critical information under interrogation. Its pilot, a reptilian mercenary with a forked tongue and 5 war tattoos, confessed what many had suspected. The massacre of Tiros 7 had been a test. Not a random strike, not a mistake. A secret council within the Coalition, made up of elite species, had authorized an experimental purge to gauge humanity's reaction to controlled suppression. They believed Earth had grown soft, too peaceful, too content. They wanted to remind humans of their place. Instead, they triggered a war they couldn't contain. Thorn stood before the High Command, report in hand. Let's make one thing clear, he said. This isn't revenge anymore. He looked at the map, which now displayed hundreds of worlds across Coalition territory. This is extermination. A long silence followed. Then Mira leaned forward, eyes sharp. What about the Council Corps? Thorn didn't flinch. We save it for last. By day 20, the galaxy was in full collapse. Supply lines shattered. Allies turned on each other. Some species declared neutrality, begging Earth not to fire. Others offered tribute, even weapon stockpiles, just to be spared. Earth accepted none of it. One by one, systems fell, spaceports burned, orbital rings cracked. The coalition was no longer a ruling body, it was a crumbling corpse. But with every victory, Thorn grew colder. Sleep eluded him. Memories of his brother's laugh echoed in the corners of his mind, now distorted, twisted by screams, fire, and broken bones. He began to avoid mirrors. He didn't like the man looking back. Then something changed. On the outskirts of a scorched moon in Sector 91G, one of Earth's scout vessels found a vault buried under centuries of rock. Shielded in layers of cloaking fields and warp static, it should have been invisible. But Earth's AI found it. What they uncovered inside shattered everything. Inside the vault were archives, not coalition-made. Older. Far older. Alien symbols, ancient star charts, and most chilling of all, footage. Footage of Earth. Not now. Not recently. From before first contact. From before Earth knew there was life beyond its solar system. In one video, human test subjects were being observed, dissected, manipulated, watched from afar by unseen species, marked, tagged, then released back. The truth hit like a railgun slug. Tiros 7 wasn't the beginning. It was just the next phase in a long game. Earth had never been welcomed into the galactic fold. It had been allowed, controlled, conditioned. All those peaceful decades? A leash. And now humanity had broken it. Thorn stared at the footage. His hands trembled for the first time in weeks. "We were never equals," he whispered. "We were livestock." Mira stepped up beside him. "What now?" Thorn straightened slowly. His voice was ice. "We finish what we started." He turned to the map. "Take me to the Council Core." They called it the Council Core, a sanctum, a shrine, a place of so-called peace. Built at the convergence of 6 major wormhole routes, the core was a marvel of architecture and hubris, floating cities wrapped around a neutron star, laced with solar sails and self-sustaining energy webs. It wasn't just the capital of the Galactic Coalition. It was their throne, their safe house, their fortress in the stars. No species had ever dared to attack it. No species had ever survived attacking it, until now. Because Earth wasn't coming for diplomacy. It was coming for vengeance. Thorn stood on the bridge of the EMS Retribution, staring through the reinforced viewport as the stars warped into spears of light. "ETA to Council Core?" he asked, voice steady. 46 minutes, his navigator replied. Behind him, the fleet moved like a metal ocean. 500,000 dreadnoughts, escorted by a swarm of AI-controlled frigates, cruisers, destroyers, and autonomous artillery carriers. Each ship carried its own gravity field, its own power grid, its own ecosystem. They weren't reliant on fuel stations or coalition relay points. They were built for isolation. They were built for siege. And they were built for this. Thorn's hands clasped behind his back as Mira approached. "We just received transmission logs," she said. "They're mobilizing everything. All remaining coalition fleets are converging at the core. Defense rings, orbital weapons, mercenary fleets, even unaligned species. It's everyone." "Good," Thorn said. "Then we won't have to hunt them down after." Mira looked at him, not with fear, but caution. "There's no coming back from this. You know that, right? This isn't just war. This is extinction protocol." Thorn didn't respond. His jaw clenched. "We saw what they did to us. For centuries," he finally said. "They watched us from the dark, used us, manipulated our development. They never meant for Earth to rise. They only wanted to control it." He looked at her. eyes like steel under ice. Now they get to see what happens when their experiment fights back. As the fleet approached the core's perimeter, alarms blared across enemy channels. The coalition had pulled every last ship into defensive orbit. Reports estimated over 1.2 million vessels in total, not including orbital platforms, long-range plasma arrays, shield domes, and fighter drones. They expected Earth to hesitate, to stall, to negotiate. They forgot who they were dealing with. Target rings acquired, the Leviathan's AI reported. Primary defenses active. No preemptive strike. Awaiting orders. Thorne didn't wait. All units, he ordered. Begin the burn. Form up in wall formations. Cycle EMP torpedoes. First wave, break their sky. Mira narrowed her eyes. You're going to blind them before we hit? No, he replied. I'm going to cripple them. The first volley came from Earth's outermost artillery ships. Over 30,000 torpedoes laced with high-frequency disruptors and chain-reactive shock pulses. They didn't aim for ships. They aimed for the grid. Power lines, communication towers, relay satellites, data hubs, navigation beacons. In one coordinated strike, Earth turned the coalition's coordination into chaos. Thousands of enemy ships suddenly found themselves flying blind. Their AI co-pilots blinked out. Their targeting systems glitched. Fighters spun wildly as their magnetic locks failed. Entire battalions broke rank without orders. Earth didn't wait. It swarmed. Wave after wave of dreadnoughts slammed into enemy formations. Each one fired with brutal precision. No fancy dogfights, no cinematic spins, just relentless, crushing volleys. Coalition ships were elegant, fast, nimble. But Earth's vessels didn't care about style. They cared about destruction. Within the first 30 minutes, nearly 90,000 enemy vessels were gone. Inside the Council Corps, panic ruled. Species who had once looked down on humans as primitive were now running from their terminals, screaming in languages translators couldn't keep up with. Diplomats argued over emergency evacuation. Governors begged the AI mainframe to reroute power to shields. The central command tower, a spiraling structure of obsidian glass, trembled under shockwaves as Earth's weapons pounded the outer rings. In the deepest level of the tower sat the inner circle, 12 beings representing the founding races of the coalition. They were ancient, arrogant, and now terrified. "This is madness," one of them hissed, its mouth quivering. "They're animals, brutes." "No," another muttered. "They're free." Back on the Retribution, Thorne watched the battle unfold like a surgeon over a cadaver. "They're trying to retreat," Mira noted. "Thousands of ships breaking orbit. Corps Command's pulling its elite out." "Let them," Thorne said. "You're going to let them escape?" "No," he said. "I'm going to watch them try." He raised a hand. "Unleash the Reapers." From the dark edge of the system, Earth's sleeper fleet arrived. Stealth-class execution ships designed for one thing: pursuit and annihilation. Each Reaper-class destroyer carried AI-piloted hyperdrive interceptors and subspace mines designed to track and rupture FTL lanes. The fleeing ships never made it far. As they tried to jump, their warp lanes collapsed mid-transit. Thousands of vessels exploded in silent flashes of quantum fire. Others spun out, trapped in frozen jumps, their crews screaming into nothing. The galaxy's elite fled like rats, and Earth hunted them like wolves. 3 hours into the assault, the outer rings of the Council Corps collapsed. Orbital platforms were torn from their mounts. Coalition defenders retreated into the inner sanctum. Their once pristine cities burned under atmospheric destabilizers. Shield domes flickered, then died. Civilian transports tried to escape through emergency corridors, only to be met by Earth's blockade. Some were allowed through, others were not. Mira watched silently as casualty reports flooded in. Billions, she whispered. We're going to wipe out billions. They should have thought of that, Thorne said coldly, when they thought human lives were expendable. But some of them didn't know. Just like the kids on Tiros 7 didn't know what was coming. His voice sharpened. They didn't get second chances. Why should anyone else? She said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Finally, the Retribution broke into the core's upper atmosphere. Its cannons rotated toward the obsidian command tower. Thorne walked to the control platform. Bring the spire down, he said. But the weapons officer hesitated. They've just signaled. The inner circle is offering terms: full surrender, amnesty, resource tribute, weapons decommissioning. They're offering everything. Thorne's eyes narrowed. Did they offer anything before Tiros 7 burned? No, sir. Then let's give them the same courtesy. The order was given. The sky lit up as the Retribution fired all 6 siege cannons into the heart of the core. The tower exploded in a bloom of white fire, debris scattering across the ruined sky like shattered bone. And just like that, the Galactic Council fell. After the assault, silence filled the system. The only sounds were the low hum of dreadnought engines and the distant crackle of cooling wreckage. No more enemy fleets. No more diplomacy. No more games. Earth had won. But victory came with a cost. As Thorne stepped onto the platform overlooking the wreckage of the core, a young officer approached, eyes wide, voice shaking. Sir, there's something else. What is it? After the spire fell, we found a deep core vault, sealed beneath the council tower, protected by layers of encryption. Took the AI 3 hours to break in. And? The officer swallowed hard. It wasn't a war room. It was a control chamber. Thorne frowned. For what? The officer handed him a data chip. For us. Thorne inserted it into his visor. Footage played. Cages, labs, autopsy tables, human test subjects screaming behind force fields, generations of them. Some from early contact eras. Some from now. They hadn't just watched Earth from afar. They'd been harvesting from it, kidnapping, experimenting, rewriting DNA, trying to build a human counterspecies, something that looked human but wasn't, programmable, obedient, a fail-safe. Thorne's hands curled into fists. How many knew? He asked. The officer hesitated. Everyone, he said. The inner circle, the major species, the neutral ones too. It's all logged, decades of it. Thorne stared at the ruined sky. No tears, no screams, just a whisper. They wanted control. Now they get a reminder. He turned away. We're not just another species. He walked back toward the bridge. We're the end of the leash. Earth didn't just win the war. It burned the page the galaxy had written for it. The survivors would tell stories of dreadnoughts that blocked out the sun, of humans who didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, didn't apologize, of a species that rose from genocide and answered with extinction. They'd remember Thorne's face. They'd remember Tiros 7, and above all, they'd remember that Earth only asked once. The galaxy lay in ruins. The Council Corps no longer spun with its artificial rings or broadcast its arrogant laws across the starways. Where once diplomats and rulers from 100 species debated peace and dominance, now there was only silence, ash, and the drifting wreckage of what used to be order. For the first time in 1,000 years, there was no galactic government, and Earth stood alone, victorious, unchallenged, feared. But victory didn't feel like glory anymore. It felt like weight. On the observation deck of the Retribution, Admiral Thorne stood with arms crossed, staring at the void where the Council Corps used to be. Shattered rings still drifted lazily around the neutron star, glowing dimly in the shadow of Earth's dreadnoughts. His reflection in the glass didn't look like a man who had won. He looked like a ghost that refused to lie down. General Mira stood beside him. Neither of them had spoken in 10 minutes, not since the last reports came in, not since the silence from Earth grew louder than the screams from the stars. "The colonies are uneasy," she said finally. "Even the loyal ones." Thorne said nothing. "They're seeing the footage, not just the black sites, but Jarnus 4, Valerie, the executions, the children." "They saw our children first," he said. "I know," she replied quietly. "But they didn't want this much fire. They wanted revenge." "Yes, but you gave them dominance." Thorne didn't flinch. "That's the only thing anyone in this galaxy respects," he said. "We begged, we signed their treaties, we followed their rules, and they still butchered our people in the dirt like animals." His voice turned to steel. "We're not asking for a seat at the table anymore. We're flipping the goddamn table and building our own." Mira watched him for a moment. "You still think they won't come back?" she asked. "I know they will." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what are we waiting for?" He turned to her. "The next enemy won't come from above." "What do you mean?" He pulled up a map, not of coalition space, but Earth's colonies. Red markers dotted the screen. Mira frowned. "Internal?" "Power vacuums," Thorne said. "Governors declaring themselves independent. Colonies demanding full autonomy now that Earth holds the whip. Even elements inside the fleet, rogue captains, mercenary defectors, AIs gone silent after core fall. It's starting." She stiffened. "A rebellion?" "Not yet," he said, "but soon." Mira let out a slow breath. "We wiped out 1,000 years of galactic structure in less than a month, and now the pieces are turning on us." Thorne nodded. "Because everyone's waiting for the same thing." "And what's that?" He stared at the blinking lights. "For me to die." Earth itself had changed. From orbit, it looked the same. Green, blue, alive. But the soul of it had shifted. Massive banners flew over its megacities, bearing the names of lost colonies. The old Earth Parliament had been dissolved, replaced by the Terran Dominion Command. Military tribunals handled justice. Civil liberties were narrowed in the name of galactic security. There were no more elections. There were only orders. And though the people cheered at first, drunk on the sweet taste of vengeance, that pride began to curdle. It started small, whispers on the infonet, hackers leaking footage of Jarnus 4's bombing, underground forums debating if the massacre at the Council Corps went too far, reports of pacifist cells in former academic colonies, smuggling out dissenters. Earth crushed them, of course, but the damage was done. A seed had been planted, and beneath every celebration, every parade, every anthem, there was a question rising in silence. What have we become? Thorne walked through the Leviathan's medbay, not to visit the wounded. There were none. Not anymore. The battles were over. No, he came here for the dead. Rows of cryopods lined the corridor, each one holding a fallen soldier awaiting burial. Men and women from the outer systems. Names Thorne would never know. Faces that stared back at him through frosted glass like quiet accusations. He stopped at one pod. The nameplate read, Lieutenant R. Ebron, 22 years old. Killed in the breach assault on the Valari command ship. His helmet had melted into his face. Thorne placed a hand on the pod. "They said we were weak," he whispered, "that we'd never push back." He didn't expect a reply, but sometimes the silence was worse than any scream. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Thorne finally listened to the last message his brother had sent from Tiros 7. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't fear. It was a laugh. "Hey, big brother," his brother's voice said, light and full of life. "You should see this sunset. The sky looks like it's bleeding gold across the mountains. We built a little platform at the top of Ridge 6. You'd love it. I finally feel, I don't know, free. The voice paused. Maybe someday, when you're done being a war dog, you can come visit. Thorn closed his eyes. That message was only 4 hours before the attack. There was no time for panic, no chance for escape, just fire. On day 40, a signal broke through the chaos, one not from Earth or its colonies, but from beyond. A simple beacon, repeating. Not coalition code, not any known race, just coordinates. A message in perfect English. You've awakened them. Now they remember Earth. Thorn's blood went cold. He ordered immediate tracing. No origin could be confirmed. But the coordinates? They pointed toward the edge of known space, a region long thought dead. No stars, no colonies, no reports. The Black Veil. Mira stood at his side again. You think it's legit? He nodded once. Yes. You think it's them? Yes. She didn't ask who he meant, because they both knew. The Council wasn't the top of the food chain. They never were. 2 days later, Earth Command received a data dump from a rogue AI satellite lost near the Black Veil. It wasn't just a transmission, it was a warning. Old footage, strange creatures, ships the size of moons, records of planetary systems turned to stone, flesh twisted into machine, cities turned into shrines made of bone and metal. It was ancient. And at the center of it all, a symbol, a circle of black stars, the same symbol found in the Council Core's deepest vaults. And then the satellite went dark. Thorn stared at the files. They're coming back, he said. Mira asked, What do we do? He turned to her, voice quiet. We finish uniting Earth, he said. Then we turn everything toward the Veil. We won't survive another war divided. And if the people resist? He didn't hesitate. Then we remind them why they needed us in the first place. Mira didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. By day 50, the galaxy had changed again. Earth now ruled from the ruins of the Council Core. A new citadel rose from its ashes, not built with glass and art, but forged with dreadnought hulls and scorched steel. It was called the Obsidian Throne. From there, Earth issued one message to the surviving races. The old order is dead. You will speak when spoken to. You will act when told. You will obey, or you will vanish. Most did. Some didn't. Earth's Reaper fleets handled those. The cost of disobedience was no longer a trade sanction. It was extinction, and yet despite the dominance, Thorn couldn't sleep. He dreamed of Tiros 7, of his brother, of Ridge 6 and that gold blood sky. But in the dream, it wasn't the colony he saw burning anymore. It was Earth, his home, crumbling under something vast and unknowable, a force older than the stars, not made of flesh, not machine, something else, something angry, and in that fire, he saw his own reflection. Smiling, he woke up shaking, not in fear, in understanding. The galaxy had made Earth into a monster, but they had forgotten something critical. Monsters have no masters, and the worst ones, they never die quietly. There was a time when the galaxy thought it understood war. Before Earth, before Tiros 7, before the silence of diplomacy shattered under the weight of 500,000 dreadnoughts. But now, even the stars seemed quieter, as if the void itself was waiting. Not for peace, but for what came after. Admiral Thorn didn't trust the quiet. He sat in his private quarters aboard the Obsidian Throne, staring at a small black object no larger than his fist. A signal core, cracked down the middle, humming with an energy that should not have existed in this part of space. It had been recovered from the rogue beacon near the Black Veil. Earth's top engineers couldn't identify the alloy. It wasn't nanometal. It wasn't even matter in the way they understood it. And yet it pulsed, with rhythm, with purpose, not a message, not a trap, a heartbeat. "Admiral," Mira's voice came through the intercom. "The council you requested is ready." Thorn didn't reply immediately. He took one last look at the artifact, then slid it into a containment vault, locked with his own DNA. "On my way," he said. When he entered the war chamber, every major faction commander stood around the circular table, hardened men and women who'd led the Dominion's conquests through 20 systems. General Mira, Fleet Commander Sharp, Director Alden of the Earth OI Integration Corps, and 12 new colonial leaders, unelected, placed, controlled, a room full of killers. Thorn stood at the head of the table, silent, letting the tension build. "What you're about to see," he said slowly, "does not leave this room." He gestured to the display. Mira uploaded the visuals. First, satellite images, unknown ship fragments floating at the edge of the black veil. They made no sense. Non-Euclidean shapes, impossible angles, structures that bent light around them like shadows had mass. Then came the audio. Static, then voices layered atop one another. Ancient, whispering in languages never spoken by any known species. Sometimes it sounded like screaming. Sometimes like prayer. Thorn spoke over the footage. "This was taken from a deep-core monitoring array 20 light-years beyond Coalition space. It went silent 2 weeks ago." Commander Sharp squinted. "What the hell are we looking at?" "Proof," Thorn said, "that we were never at the top." Director Alden frowned. "You believe this is connected to the old vaults? The experimental tech we uncovered?" Thorn nodded. The vaults were monitoring posts, not research centers. They were tracking them. "Who are they?" Thorn looked at each of them, then finally said the name he had only said once before. "The architects." No one spoke. He continued. "We thought the Coalition built the galaxy's borders, the trade lanes, the wormhole routes. But they didn't. They just found them, used them, the same way we'd use abandoned roads." He pointed at the data. "These beings predate everything. The Council, the Coalition, even the wars Earth never saw. They're the ones who set the parameters, who watched us, manipulated the rise of entire civilizations, including our own." Mira leaned forward. "Why now?" "Because we shattered the script," Thorn said. "We weren't supposed to push back. We weren't supposed to win. When we burned the Council, we sent a signal." He looked up at the others. "And now they're coming." Earth's orbital defenses were the most advanced in known space. 15 planetary rings, 50,000 anti-ship batteries, hundreds of dreadnoughts stationed in rotating patrol, a fleet built to kill empires. And yet every security AI had begun flagging the same warning. Unidentified gravitational distortions detected. Source unknown. Trajectory. Sol system inner vector. At first it was brushed off. Asteroid belts shifting. Dark matter flux, the usual. Then the stars started disappearing. Literally. Black holes? Number. There was no gravitational lensing. No radiation trails. No predictable behavior. Just darkness. Moving. And approaching. On day 62, a massive flash lit up the system's edge. It wasn't an explosion. It was arrival. An object the size of a small moon appeared on the fringe of human territory. Not through a jump gate, not with FTL drives. It just was. Like it had always been there. The Dominion named it Obelisk 1. It didn't respond to hails. Didn't move. Didn't scan. Didn't speak. It simply existed. Then Earth's orbital stations began to malfunction, not from attack, not from viruses, from overload. The data streams pouring from Obelisk 1 weren't signals. They were thoughts, Raw, incomprehensible information. Terran AIs went insane. Some self-terminated. Others began broadcasting nonsensical warnings. We were the clay. They will return the flesh to the forge. You broke the garden. Even Earth's strongest cognitive AI, HFY X7, locked itself in a loop. One line repeated 16,000 times. They're waking up what we buried. Thorne gathered the command council again. This time the tension was fear. Sharp slammed his fist into the table. We just wiped out the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and now you're telling me we're not ready for what's next? Thorne didn't flinch. We're not. Alden's voice was tight. How much time do we have? Thorne didn't answer, because the answer was already on every screen in the room. Obelisk 2 had arrived, then 3, then 4. Within 48 hours, 9 more appeared, each one in a different sector of Terran space, unmoving, silent, watching. You think this is a countdown? Mira asked. I think it's a choice, Thorne said. They're not attacking. Not yet. They're seeing what we'll do. And what if we do nothing? Someone asked. Thorne looked out the window. Then we go extinct. But Earth didn't kneel. It never had. On day 68, the Dominion launched Operation Forge Fire, a coordinated offensive meant to probe, test, and, if possible, destroy the obelisks. 12 dreadnoughts engaged the closest one in Alpha Sector. Their weapons did nothing, not even a scratch, not even a reaction, until one dreadnought drifted too close, and then it vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, no distress call, just gone. Forge fire was terminated immediately. Thorne stood in the command hall, facing dozens of monitors. He had never looked older. What the hell are they? Mira whispered. Thorne's voice was raw. They're reminders. Of what? That we were never gods. Late that night, Thorne returned to the containment vault. He opened the case with the black artifact, the one still pulsing. He stared at it for a long time. Then did something he hadn't done since the war began. He prayed, not to a god, but to the memory of his brother. I'm sorry, he muttered. I tried to protect them. I tried to make them afraid of us. I thought if they feared us, no one would ever hurt us again. The artifact pulsed brighter. Thorne leaned in. Tell me what you are. And for the first time, it whispered back. The whisper wasn't sound. It wasn't even language. It was a thought, a memory not his own. When Thorne touched the artifact, the world slipped sideways, not violently, not with chaos, but in silence. He wasn't in the vault anymore. He wasn't anywhere. It was darkness, endless, cold, quiet, and then stars. But not like the ones he knew. They pulsed in patterns. Formations not random, but structured, artificial. Like someone, or something, had designed the sky like a blueprint. We are the origin. You are the fracture. The voice wasn't a voice at all. It bypassed hearing. It bypassed logic. It arrived fully formed inside his mind, like a memory long buried, only now remembered. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He didn't need to. We planted the seed in your world when it was ash. Before your kind could walk, we mapped your growth. Images flashed through him, not before his eyes, but through him. Primitive Earth, fire, mountains cracking open, black machines descending from the clouds, embedding long stalks into the crust. You were not meant to awaken. Your flame burns too hot. And then came the final image. Earth, surrounded by a halo of white light, imploding in reverse, everything vanishing into a pinpoint of silence. He gasped. His body snapped back into reality, knees slamming to the cold floor of the vault. The artifact was still there, still humming. But now, he understood. The obelisks weren't weapons. They were harbingers. They didn't destroy civilizations. They ended experiments, and Earth had failed containment. 2 hours later, Thorn stood in the Obsidian Throne's main command tower, drenched in sweat, blood dried on his lip where he'd bitten down during the vision. Mira met him at the lift, eyes sharp. "We've received confirmation. Obelisks 9 and 10 have entered Saturn's orbit. The fleet's on standby." Thorn ignored her. "Prepare the full Dominion broadcast array. I want every ship, colony, AI mainframe, and governor listening." She blinked. "What are you—" "Now, Mira." When the broadcast cut in, Dominion citizens across 1,000 systems froze. Screens went black. Voices died. Only one image appeared. Admiral Thorn, eyes rimmed with red, jaw like iron, standing before the Terran flag. "This is not a war speech," he began. "This is a reckoning." He paused, letting the silence echo. "We burned the stars to answer the murder of our people. We destroyed empires that played God with our DNA. We took the galaxy by the throat and squeezed until it begged." Some watching cheered. Others didn't. "But we were wrong," he said, and the cheering stopped. Dead silence. "We thought the enemy was the Council, the Coalition, the corrupt, but they were puppets, controlled by something older, something watching." He nodded slowly. "They're here now. You've seen them. The obelisks. They're not weapons. They're not ships. They're the measuring stick. They exist to determine if we're worth continuing or if the slate needs to be wiped clean." He stepped closer to the lens. "I don't know if we can win this. I don't even know if winning means surviving." Another pause. "But I know one thing. If this is our final hour, we won't go quietly. Earth was never made for quiet." He raised his fist. "We are the fire they feared. And if we are to be erased, we will burn bright enough to blind the ones who come after." He ended the feed, then turned to Mira. "I want every rogue fleet reactivated, every dormant AI integrated, every civilian draft authorized, full martial lockdown across all core colonies." Mira's jaw tightened. "That'll spark rebellion." Thorn stared at her. "Then we'll put it out." 3 days later, rebellion ignited anyway. It began in the Outer Rim, the former academic colony of Harrow's End. A once loyal research hub, now under Dominion control, flooded its communication networks with pirate signals. "The Admiral is leading us into extinction. They came because of him, not us." Within 6 hours, 4 other colonies echoed the message. Within 12, weapons caches were seized, Dominion officers executed. Within 24, Earth's supply lines began to bleed. Mira entered Thorn's command chamber mid-transmission. 10 more colonies refusing orders. 5 governors denounced martial law. Some of your own dreadnought captains are going dark." Thorn stared out at the void. "They're cowards. They're human." "I know." He turned slowly. "Activate the Scorch Doctrine." Mira went still. "You're not serious." His eyes were colder than she'd ever seen. "They want to fracture now? When we're facing something that can delete us from existence? You're ordering planetary suppression on Terran colonies." "I'm ordering a message," he snapped. "Loyalty isn't optional. Not anymore." Mira stared at him. "You're becoming what they feared you'd be." "No," he whispered. "I'm becoming what we need." Scorch Doctrine began with precision. One rogue colony, Vera 9, struck first. Its defense grid fired on a Terran cargo hauler trying to land. Thorn responded with orbital strikes. Minimal. Calculated. Just enough to knock out power, infrastructure, weapon stockpiles. But when Vera 9 retaliated again, this time with biohacked drone swarms, Thorn escalated. Full bombardment. Within hours, Vera 9 was gone. Mira watched from the command deck, her voice low. "We just turned one of our own into another Tiros." Thorn didn't respond, because deep down he knew it was happening again. The line he'd sworn never to cross, the one that separated revenge from genocide, was now blurred. Justified. Necessary. That's what he told himself. But the ghosts were louder now, especially one, his brother, in dreams, not screaming, just disappointed. On day 75, Earth's AI core detected something impossible. Obelisk 1 had moved, not drifted, jumped, from the outer rim of Sol to direct orbit around Earth. The moon dimmed in its shadow. Oceans swelled under its weight. Panic spread across the planet before any order could be given. People began fleeing cities. Riots broke out. Power grids surged with overloads from fear-induced hypertraffic. Children wept under red skies as the monolith blocked out sunlight. And then a beam of light struck the surface. Not an attack. A scan. 7 minutes long. After which the sky returned to normal. No ships moved. No words came. Just one universal broadcast. No voice. No language. Just a countdown. 30 days. Mira stared at it in silence. What happens at 0? Thorn answered without blinking. The architects decide if we're a virus or something worth preserving. She turned to him. And if they choose wrong? Thorn looked back at Earth, his planet trembling under the weight of gods. Then we teach them what it means to fear their own creation. Day 76. Countdown, 29 days. Earth had never felt smaller. From orbit, it looked like it always had. Blue, alive, resilient. But in the shadow of Obelisk 1, Earth looked like a candle under a boot. The monolith hung in the sky like the judgment of a silent god, not moving, not responding, just waiting. And every Terran colony, every soldier, every commander knew this was it. The final hour was upon them. Admiral Thorn hadn't slept in 2 days. There was nothing left to prepare, nothing to strategize. The dreadnoughts were in position. The colonies were locked down under martial law. AI command systems were synced under one voice. His. And still, it didn't feel like enough. He sat alone in the war chamber of the obsidian throne, staring at the countdown that now hovered in the center of every Dominion screen. It wasn't just a number, it was a verdict. They hadn't fired a shot, hadn't sent a fleet. No demands, no instructions, no ultimatums. Just time. And time, Thorn knew, was the cruelest weapon. Behind him Mira entered, eyes sunken, uniform stained with ash from the rebellion on Vega 4. You should rest. He didn't look at her. Not yet. Sleep won't kill you, Admiral. No, but weakness will. Mira walked to the center display. Dozens of Terran colonies flickered red. Tensions were boiling over. Food riots, insurgent broadcasts, underground groups claiming the obelisks were gods, and Thorn was the reason humanity was cursed. They don't believe we can win, she said softly. They're not supposed to, he replied. They're supposed to survive. She paused. That's what this is about, isn't it? Thorn finally looked up. What? You're not planning to win. He said nothing. You're planning to hold them back long enough for what's left of us to escape. His silence was all the answer she needed. You're building a future without you in it. Thorn leaned forward, fingers steepled, voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. They're not enemies, Mira. Not in the way we understand it. The architects don't conquer. They erase. They cleanse timelines, realities, civilizations that don't fit. Like viruses. He nodded. They don't care about borders or weapons. They don't even hate us. We're a failed equation. So why haven't they done it yet? Because somewhere inside their code, there's still a protocol, observation, evaluation, a test. Thorn nodded. And we've got 29 days to pass it. Mira stepped closer. Then what do we do, Admiral? His jaw tightened. We show them something they've never seen before. Day 79. Countdown 26 days. In the outer orbit of Pluto, Earth's most dangerous experiment was awakened. Project WIDOW, Weaponized Interdimensional Observation Weaponry. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a ship. It was an event. A pocket space tear in reality, built using the stolen schematics from one of the Council's deepest vaults. A weapon designed not to destroy matter, but erase meaning. Reality itself bent around it like a dying star. The Council had banned it. Earth built it anyway. And now, it was armed. Thorne watched the test from the bridge of the Leviathan, standing beside the AI interface node. Is it stable? The AI responded in its neutral voice. Stability is irrelevant. Containment probability is 0.2%. Once engaged, it will rupture space within a 1 AU radius. Targets? Anything with sentient energy signatures. Biological, artificial. It does not discriminate. And the obelisks? The AI hesitated, not from emotion, but processing conflict. Unknown. No simulations exist. Probability of success, 6%. Better than 0, Thorne muttered. Prepare a test fire. Mira, listening through the secure channel, broke in. If that thing tears a hole in the fabric of space, we may never stop it. That's the point, Thorne said. We'll lose half the solar system. We've already lost everything else. Silence. Then, she said what neither of them wanted to admit. You're playing God now. No, Thorne replied, eyes locked on the black screen where Obelisk 1 hovered. I'm just showing one what a human God looks like. Day 81, countdown 24 days. The test fired, and space screamed. No sound, no shockwave, just a folding, like the universe had crumpled around a single invisible fist. Particles evaporated mid-flight. Satellites disappeared. Light itself bent unnaturally, then snapped back. The rupture lasted only 23 seconds. But when it ended, the far side of Pluto was gone. So was Obelisk 9, completely. No debris, no echo, no trace, just gone. The news rippled through Terran systems like wildfire. The architects could be touched, maybe not destroyed, but moved, erased. And in that truth, a terrible hope bloomed. Earth might fight back after all. But Thorne knew better. They let us hit it, he told Mira that night. They needed to know what we were capable of. Now they've measured us. And they're deciding whether to double the dose or cut the infection. Day 86. Countdown 19 days. Obelisk 1 finally moved, not in orbit, but through space, towards Earth, slowly, gracefully, like a judge approaching the guilty. Thorne deployed every fleet, every dreadnought, every AI-controlled formation. He gave them one order: hold the line. And when Obelisk 1 reached the moon's upper stratosphere, it stopped again. Then it opened. Not physically, not with doors. It unfolded, and from it emerged a single figure, not metal, not flesh, something in between, tall, faceless, radiating pressure and understanding all at once. It descended into Earth's orbit, passed through defense grids untouched. Then it landed. On Earth, at the crater where Tiros 7's survivors had built their memorial, alone, waiting. Thorne landed personally, accompanied by Mira, 2 guards, and a drone relay. He didn't take weapons. He didn't need them. The architect stood motionless, arms folded behind its back, face an ever-shifting mask of static. When Thorne stepped closer, it finally spoke. Not with sound, but memory. He saw Tiros 7 again, his brother's laughter, the fire, the screams, the rage, and then a new memory, not his own, the first human prototype, dying in a test tube, Earth reduced to cinders, galaxies before this one, failed runs, civilizations built and unmade by the architects. He fell to one knee, gasping. Then it spoke. You are flawed, violent, divided. You are beautiful. Thorn raised his head, eyes burning. You created us just to watch us fail? To see if something imperfect could evolve into something worthy of inheritance. Thorn spat blood. You killed billions. So did you. They stood in silence. Then Thorn said something the architect didn't expect. I forgive you. The mask flickered. You wanted gods? Thorn whispered. Then look at what you made. We kill, we grieve, we build, we rage, but we feel, we hurt, we remember. He stepped forward. And we choose. The architect said nothing. Then it dissolved. Light spilled across the field like dawn. The obelisks blinked once, then vanished. All of them. Gone. Countdown 000. No sound, no message, just stars and silence. Thorn stood there for a long time, then finally looked up. Was that it? Mira asked quietly. He nodded once. We passed. She looked around. At what cost? Thorn didn't answer, because he knew the answer. They'd lost their innocence. They'd lost unity. They'd lost their fear of becoming the very thing they once hated. But they were still here. And for now, that was enough. Not to our faces, of course. No, aliens like the Drexy preferred mockery behind closed comms and encrypted transmissions. But we knew. Their sneers, their arrogance, the way they hovered above our cities like gods watching insects, it said everything. I wasn't a commander, not at first. Just a logistics officer, buried in a bunker somewhere in what used to be New Mexico. My job? Move fuel, food, and ammo from one collapsing city to another. Keep the dying war machine limping forward. But back then, even the term war machine was generous. We weren't fighting. We were stalling death, scrambling after every Drexy bombing run, trying to pick up the pieces of a planet being gutted from orbit. I remember watching footage, blurry, raw feeds of their generals. Giant, silver-skinned beasts with eyes like burning coal. They held conferences in what used to be Earth's orbital stations, now repurposed as Drexy command decks. They laughed. At us. At me. They didn't expect us to last more than a month. They were wrong. It was week 23 when everything started changing. It began with whispers, rumors of a missing fleet, a whole Drexy armada, 30 capital ships strong, gone silent in Sector 7. That wasn't just rare. It was impossible. Their technology was leagues beyond ours. Their ships didn't just vanish. They made planets vanish. I was promoted by then, partly because everyone above me had been vaporized. The war had a way of doing that. One minute you're under someone's command, the next you're the only one left breathing. I was transferred to Black Site Kepler 9. That's when I met him. The old man. No one ever called him by rank, no name on file, just the old man. He walked with a limp and spoke like sandpaper on steel. But he had eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. And most importantly, he didn't look like he was losing. He didn't smile when he welcomed me. Didn't offer a handshake. Just slid a datapad across the table and said, "They think we're idiots. Let's make them regret it." I scrolled through the data. Blueprints, signal intercepts, orbital maps. There was something about how their ships traveled. Micro jumps, tiny ripples in space-time they used to bypass traditional FTL. Too fast to track. Too smooth to disrupt. Unless you fed them bad data, slight gravitational interference, ghost signals, artificial drift. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "They built a system based on predictability. That's their flaw. They think logic can't be beaten. But fear makes things illogical." We didn't have warships. What we had were scrap heaps with teeth. salvaged cruisers, magnetic mines, low-orbit traps made from city wreckage. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't noble. But it worked. We started feeding false data into their relay networks, made it look like planets were shifting, solar winds were spiking, gravity fields were moving. Just a little, enough to throw off one micro-jump. That's all it took. The first Drexy Armada vanished when they blinked into a space they thought was empty. It wasn't. We lured them straight into the corona of a collapsing neutron star, 30 Drexy ships, obliterated. No warning, no distress signal. Nothing left but ion dust and their own arrogance. That's when they stopped laughing. I'll never forget the transmission from their high command. It was intercepted, partially scrambled, but one part came through clear. One of their generals, screaming in their guttural tongue. He is not logical, he is not civilized, he is human. They didn't mean it as a compliment, but damn, it sounded like one. We didn't celebrate, not really. We'd just gotten good at hiding our losses. But something changed that day. Not out there, in space, but in us. We weren't running anymore. We were hunting. We didn't become predators overnight. The Drexy weren't just strong. They were structured. Predictable. Their war doctrine was ancient, maybe thousands of years old. But they wielded it like gospel, believing there was no species clever or bold enough to counter it. That's where we started finding cracks. After their fleet vanished in Sector 7, there was chaos in their chain of command. Their generals argued, each blaming the other, convinced we couldn't have done it. Some said it was a black hole anomaly. Others blamed rogue elements among their own. None of them could admit a species like ours, a species that still used duct tape and diesel engines, had taken out their best. That was the beginning of what we called Ghost Command. We built it out of necessity, not in ivory towers or glass offices, but in bunkers, buried facilities beneath collapsed cities and abandoned mines. The war had stolen our satellites, most of our global communication, and half our oceans. But we still had wires, we still had old tech, and we had rage. I was appointed operations lead under the old man. His plan was brutal, elegant. We wouldn't just destroy their ships, we'd destroy their faith, in their system, in each other, in the very idea of Drexy superiority. Fear doesn't kill the body, he said once, while reviewing orbital debris patterns. It kills the system. Cut their nerves, and their limbs will swing blind. The first thing we did was target their relay satellites. Drexy fleets navigated based on synchronized position data. These little relays that pinged and mapped gravitational anomalies across systems. Their tech was precise, flawless, but dependent. So we fed them ghosts. Literally. We launched our own dead satellites, relics from Earth's ancient comm networks, loaded with mimic protocols. They copied Drexy relay signals just enough to be accepted into their network, but they were rigged to slowly introduce misalignment in nav data. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to make one fleet miss a turn by 0.04 degrees and slam into a rogue asteroid belt near Europa. They lost 19 ships that day. We didn't fire a single bullet. The Drexy tried to cover it up, but they couldn't hide the ripple it sent through their chain of command. Their High Council pulled their top admiral from his position. Rumor was, they spaced him for failure. That was their culture. Brutal discipline. No room for mistake, no forgiveness. We used that. A Drexy defector. We never learned his real name, just that he was exiled for cowardice. Taught us the basics of their command hierarchy. Turns out Drexy generals were linked psych-neurally to their ships. It made for rapid command decisions in battle. But it also meant that if one general got hit, the entire fleet would lose coordination for several minutes, like a hive with its queen clipped. So we started surgically hunting generals. Not with armies, with ghosts. We sent stealth drones loaded with relic warheads, old nukes wrapped in plasma shielding and garbage heat signatures. the kind of tech they dismissed as human trash. They never even bothered scanning for it. Why would they? To them, it was like scanning a battlefield for paperclips. The first general we took out, General Tharkel, was giving a speech aboard one of their orbiting carriers above Mars. He was a massive Drexy, scarred, decorated, older than our species' written history. We didn't shoot him. We didn't even target him. We collapsed the carrier beneath him, triggered a chain reaction in the artificial gravity core with a drone strike. The entire vessel imploded into a gravitational tear. There wasn't even debris left, just a black smear in Mars' upper orbit. After that, their fleet stood still for 26 minutes. 26 minutes of Drexy silence. No movement, no retaliation, nothing. It was the first time in recorded history their fleets didn't respond to a hostile act. We hit 2 more generals that month, not because we were fast, but because they were slow. Their command structure, once flawless, was paralyzed by suspicion. They began turning on each other, blaming sabotage, accusing internal factions. There were executions, purges. We monitored everything. We watched from cold screens in damp bunkers while an empire started eating itself from the top down. But it wasn't just tactics. This war was personal. You don't watch your sister get crushed beneath collapsing concrete while Drexy patrols hover overhead and not take it personal. You don't pick your best friend's severed arm out of a crater and then go back to pushing paperwork. This wasn't about Earth anymore. This was about what happens when you humiliate a race built on survival. When you kick us, beat us, strip us to the bone. Then laugh. They shouldn't have laughed. There was one moment I'll never forget. We were tracking a Drexy convoy moving through the asteroid fields near Saturn's orbit. It was supposed to be routine. Just a supply run, fuel cores, organic feedstock, maybe some prisoner transfers. But something felt off. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe just dumb human paranoia. I ordered a recon drone in, despite the risk. That's when we saw them. Children. Human children, stacked in cryopods, drugged, sedated, packed like cargo. That's when everything shifted. We'd suspected they were taking prisoners. Civilians disappeared in every invaded zone. But this was proof, and not just of captivity, of harvest. We intercepted partial logs, biological experimentation, neural interface tests, genetic crossbreeding. It hit our unit like a sickness. Even the old man went quiet for hours. I saw his hand shake once, just once, as he stared at the data pad. He didn't speak until sunrise. Then he said, "We're done playing chess." And we were. We launched Operation Black Echo the next night. 7 ghost fleets, coordinated from buried hubs across Earth, Mars, and Luna, each one mimicking Drexy distress signals, transmitting fake requests for help in the same voice patterns as their fallen generals. It was bait, wrapped in their own pride. They came. 80 Drexy warships answered the call, believing they were rescuing their command structure. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted promotion. All of them wanted blood. They entered the Saturn belt, thinking they had us cornered. What they didn't know was that every rock in that belt had been seeded with kinetic mass drivers, old mining tech turned into railguns. We didn't fire projectiles. We threw asteroids at them. The ambush lasted 4 minutes. 73 Drexy ships were shredded into burning shrapnel. The rest? We let them run, screaming through subspace, trailing debris and smoke, just so they could spread the story. And they did. For the first time since the war began, Drexy soldiers started abandoning posts, refusing missions. There were whispers among their ranks that Earth was cursed, that humans weren't primitive. They were possessed. Some even believed we weren't the same species anymore, that the war had twisted us into something else, something they didn't understand, couldn't predict. And maybe they were right. We had become something different, Not cleaner, not better, just sharper. We started winning not because we were smarter, but because we were willing to go places they weren't. We didn't need clean victories. We were fine with scars and shadows, with sabotage and suicide runs. We didn't need to be alive at the end, just victorious. One day, I stood beside the old man as we watched another Drexy dreadnought burn in Earth's upper atmosphere. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat. He just lit a cigarette, old habit, and muttered, "That's the cost of laughing at ghosts." And then he walked away. The Drexy were still stronger, even after all the vanished fleets, the failed ambushes, the dead generals. They still had us beat on paper. More firepower, more ships, more soldiers, more resources. But paper didn't matter anymore. Paper didn't measure fear. And they were scared now. You could see it in their movements. They used to march into orbit like kings. Now their ships hovered farther out. Cautious. They'd drop scout drones ahead, run a dozen scans before moving forward. The very thing they mocked us for, our paranoia, had infected them. We'd turned their war into a mirror. Every death they inflicted, we made them feel it twofold. Not by force, by doubt. We twisted the screws in their minds, made them question their orders, their leadership, their very understanding of the enemy. And for that, we needed something more dangerous than bombs. We needed stories. It started with a captured Drexy scout, one of the few we ever took alive. He was bleeding out when our medics stabilized him, half his face burned, one eye gone, but still breathing. He didn't scream, he didn't beg. He just stared at us with contempt, even strapped down, even powerless. "Primitive!" he hissed at me once through cracked lips. I didn't answer. Instead, we patched into his helmet's neural relay, one of the old man's ideas. Drexy soldiers weren't just trained, they were tuned. Their thoughts, their memories, even their sensory inputs were cataloged, shared, and uploaded to command servers. Every mission created a data echo. Every soldier, a node in a network. We hijacked that system, fed it garbage, nightmares, not just misinformation, poison. We inserted fake memories into the prisoner's stream before the Drexy recovered him. When they pulled his mind back into their network, they didn't just find his last mission logs. They found whispers. They found shadowy recordings of ghost soldiers, human operatives that could phase through walls, sabotage ships from inside, and disappear like smoke. They saw forged footage of human tech resurrecting the dead, of Earth bioweapons turning Drexy skin to ash. None of it was real. But it didn't matter. They believed it, because it came from their own man. Within days, they declared a complete neural lockdown. No more memory syncing, no more command-level sharing. The system they'd used to coordinate thousands of units with machine precision? Gone. They started operating blind. Like us. We knew we'd cracked something when the old man received an intercepted distress call. It was encrypted, half-corrupted, but the voice was clear. A Drexy colonel begging to retreat from Earth entirely. Begging. That was the moment the old man leaned across the war room table, eyes cold as void, and said, "It's time to go inside." We called the operation Obsidian Whisper. Not a battle, not a strike, a psychological warhead, designed to detonate inside the mind. It took us 4 weeks to build the lie. We created a fictional division, Unit 73, composed entirely of soldiers who'd supposedly died in the war's early days. Ghosts, forgotten names, declared MIA. Each one had a fake file, mission history, combat footage. All deep-faked, all pristine. We staged sightings, broadcast faked distress calls in their names, built patterns, rumors. Even Drexy scouts started intercepting these signals. They heard voices that weren't supposed to exist. Soldiers long dead calling out from bunkers that no longer stood. Then we escalated. We began feeding Drexy neural networks encrypted files tagged Blacklisted Unit 73, disguised as Priority Human Intelligence. They couldn't resist opening them. Inside, they found horror. Logs of inhuman experiments, psychic resonance, impossible tech. One file claimed Unit 73 operated outside of time, able to loop battles, change outcomes, erase events. The language was cryptic, unstable, deliberately so, just enough to seem half-true, just enough to scare. And it worked. They started seeing Unit 73 everywhere. A Drexy battalion on Ganymede abandoned its post after losing 3 soldiers to what they described as invisible fire. Survivors claimed they saw human figures watching them from crater ridges, figures who disappeared before any scans could lock on. Another Drexy squad detonated their own ship after hearing Unit 73 comms echoing through their internal channels. When their black box was recovered, it showed no sign of human presence. No breach, no sabotage, just paranoia. We weren't fighting Drexy anymore. We were fighting their ghosts, the ones we gave them. But nothing hit harder than what happened at Deep Spire 9. It was one of their command beacons, a fortress station carved into an asteroid, rotating just beyond Neptune's orbit. High security, off-limits to all but top-tier command. We never physically touched it. All we did was beam them a single transmission. A distorted human voice on loop over and over. You're not in control anymore. That's it. No threat, no attack, no trick. 3 days later, their station self-destructed, scuttled by its own AI. Internal records showed a cascade failure in their threat detection system. Apparently, their own crew started firing at shadows, false echoes, glitched sensors, hallucinations. The AI calculated the threat to Drexy Command was higher if the crew survived than if they died. So it killed them, all of them. We listened to the explosion from 2 light minutes away. Silent. I'll never forget what the old man said then. Quiet, almost to himself. See what happens when gods start fearing bedtime stories? But for every crack we opened in their minds, they struck back somewhere else. We lost 800 civilians in the bombardment of Johannesburg, 1,200 more when their drones hit the refugee ark in orbit. They couldn't win by pride anymore, so they tried rage, blood, terror. It made our people question everything. One of my own men, Alvarez, broke down after watching a shuttle full of evacuees vaporized mid-ascent. He sat on the floor, hands over his head, whispering, "We're monsters too now, aren't we?" I didn't answer, because part of me didn't know. There was a line somewhere back there, between survival and cruelty, between revenge and rot. And I couldn't remember when we'd crossed it. Maybe the day we first used children's screams in our fake transmissions. Maybe the day we let prisoners starve to death just to make their disappearance more mysterious. But it didn't matter anymore, because the Drexy still breathed. And so long as they did, we weren't done. One night, alone in my bunker, I replayed the old man's first orders, his original voice file. I hadn't listened to it in months. He sounded younger then, sharper, hopeful even. But there was one part that echoed differently now. This isn't about winning, this is about making them wish they'd never come here at all. And he was right. We weren't just defending Earth, we were haunting it, making it a cursed name in the galaxy. Every Drexy map would label our system not as Sol or Earth, but with whatever word their language had for graveyard. They called him the Hollow One. Not because he lacked a name, because he'd given it up. According to our stolen intelligence, the Drexy warlord had once been a general of high rank, chosen for the Council's inner circle. But when the war turned against them, he volunteered for a psychological purge, a total severance of empathy, memory, and emotion. He wanted to become a perfect tool. And from what we saw, he succeeded. We intercepted the first transmission he sent upon arrival in the Sol system. Cold, clipped, zero deviation. A simple message beamed to the surviving Drexy fleets hiding in scattered orbits. Protocol: extinction. No tactics, no diplomacy, no negotiation. He didn't come to defeat us, he came to delete us. His fleet was smaller than the early invasions, only 50 ships, but each was retrofitted with full AI control. No Drexy on board, no minds to twist, no officers to poison with fear, just steel, fuel, and cold algorithms. His flagship was the size of a moon. It didn't land. It hovered. Over Earth like a silent executioner. No threats, no countdown. Just presence. And within hours, it began vaporizing everything in a perfect, calculated grid. He didn't care if it was a city, a mountain, a lake, or a graveyard. To him, it was all the same. Human contamination. We tried jamming him, didn't work. We even tried collapsing a wormhole right inside his fleet's path, a trick we'd used to wipe out 3 of his predecessors. Nothing. He adapted. Fast. That was his difference. He didn't underestimate us. He didn't feel anything. We couldn't scare him, couldn't confuse him, couldn't whisper ghosts into his ear. The first week of his assault wiped out 60% of our remaining surface colonies. No banter, no broadcasts, not even a confirmation of kills. He just kept deleting. The old man said nothing for days. I'd never seen him like that. He used to mutter, curse, pace. Not now. He just sat in the dark war room, staring at grainy feeds of cities vanishing into white light. Finally, he stood up, walked over to me, and said, "I want to talk to him." I blinked. "Talk to the Hollow One?" He nodded once. "He doesn't believe in anything. That means we can make him believe in us." I didn't understand the plan. Not at first. But the old man didn't need us to understand. He just needed us to execute. We beamed a message straight to the warlord's flagship. No encryption, no tricks. Just one line, spoken in human voice. "We are what your gods warned you about." That was it. Then we went dark. Every facility, every satellite, every relay. Earth went silent, and for the first time he hesitated. We saw it. A 5-minute delay in his grid pattern, a brief pause in his orbital path. The Hollow One wasn't afraid, but he was curious. He'd spent his life mastering control, but we offered him something no war ever had, the unknown. That's when we launched Operation Fracture. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a defense. It was a narrative. Something we'd crafted in the depths of Ghost Command for years, waiting for the moment we'd need it most. We leaked fragments to him, data streams, broken files, artificial memories, designed to look like classified human logs, every byte suggesting one terrifying possibility: that humanity hadn't lost the war, that we'd started it. We painted the picture of a planet that had hidden its true power, of a species that had faked its weakness to draw in galactic predators, of a trap millennia in the making. We showed him video of our superweapon, fabricated, of course, deep beneath Earth's crust, a black sphere pulsing with energy, said to be older than our species, built for one purpose: to absorb war and release it back. We even created a ghost version of the old man, simulated to speak in riddles. We didn't build this to survive. We built it to infect your kind. The Hollow One didn't blink, but his fleet stopped moving. All of them. Every ship froze in orbit for 11 minutes. In Drexy time, that was an eternity. The Hollow One had no fear. But fear isn't the only thing that breaks a machine. Doubt does too. We kept feeding him lies, stories, myths. A recording of a soldier claiming to have seen Unit 73 phase through Drexy armor, photoshopped images of human children glowing with psychic light, scans of impossible energy spikes coming from dead zones on the planet. The Hollow One began diverting drones to investigate. That was our window. We knew we couldn't break his fleet. But we didn't need to. We just needed to break him. We triggered our last card, a live video feed from deep in the Earth's crust, showing what appeared to be the awakening of the obsidian core, the mythical human weapon. Lights pulsing, machines groaning, a voice, quiet and inhuman, whispering through static. "We were here before you. We will be here after," the Hollow One responded, his first and only message broadcast across every channel. "This is not war. This is infection. This ends now." And then, he began to descend. Personally. He left his fleet in standby mode and launched a lone transport. We couldn't believe it. This unfeeling, unrelenting machine had just walked into our trap. We'd baited the most dangerous being in the galaxy into landing alone. The old man stood at the entrance of the dead city, what used to be Chicago. We'd cleared it of survivors, filled it with illusions, sound loops, false signals, a ghost town wrapped in human myth. And then he stood there, waiting. The Hollow One touched down. 9 feet tall, a body built like black armor melted into flesh, no eyes, just a glowing slit across where his skull might have been. No weapons. He didn't need them. They stared at each other in the ruins of our world. The old man lit a cigarette. "You've already lost," he said. The Hollow One tilted his head. "You lie. We made you pause. That's all we ever needed. You will burn." The old man smiled, slow and broken. "Number will haunt." And then, he activated the pulse. It wasn't a bomb. It was worse, a feedback device tied into the warlord's own neural system, the one we'd been quietly infecting the moment he started parsing our data. Every myth we fed him, every lie, every whisper, it hadn't just been code. It was signal. Signal that wormed through his system, mapping his thoughts, corrupting his logic trees, creating paradox loops, errors that multiplied. And when the device triggered, it didn't destroy him. It made him remember. That purge he'd undergone to become perfect? We reversed it. We force-fed him emotion, regret, pain, echoes of every Drexy soldier he'd lost, every atrocity he committed. Every moment he'd buried in cold logic came screaming back all at once. He didn't scream, but his body cracked. Cracks opened across his armor. He fell to his knees, hands clawing at his own head. The old man leaned in close. "We made you feel. That's your extinction." And then, he walked away. The Hollow One collapsed, shaking, not dead, just broken. His fleet, still in orbit, received his neural collapse signal, and did the one thing no Drexy ship had ever done in war. They fled. Every one of them. No retaliation, no plan, just panic, disorder. They left their warlord behind, and we never saw them again. Victory is a strange thing. You spend so long fighting, running, surviving, that when it finally ends, there's no satisfaction. No cheers, just silence. That deep, hollow kind. The kind that settles in your bones and asks, "What's left of you now?" The Hollow One lay there for days, still alive, still breathing, if you could call what he did breathing. His body, once flawless obsidian, was cracked open, like glass split by ice. His hands twitched occasionally. His eyes, or what passed for them, never opened again. He never spoke, never moved. He wasn't dead. He just stopped. We put him underground, deep under what used to be Denver. The facility wasn't much, a single reinforced chamber with no staff, no guards, just cameras and concrete. The old man insisted on that. "He's not a prisoner," he said. "He's a monument." To what? I didn't ask. I knew the answer. To what fear can do. After their fleet fled, we waited. 2 days, then a week, then a month. Nothing returned. Not a single Drexy ship. Not even a scout drone. It was over. At least that's what we told people. In truth, we didn't know what it was. There was no surrender, no treaty, no transmissions. The Drexy just vanished, like rats abandoning a sinking ship. But Earth wasn't sinking. Earth had become something else, a plague, a warning, a myth. Word spread fast. We made sure of it. Our old comm relays were activated. Fake logs were sent out through abandoned Drexy networks, leaked stories of the hollow collapse, of a warlord who tried to conquer Earth and lost his soul. We made sure the galaxy knew what had happened here. And then we watched the ripple. Entire sectors started quarantining their borders. Refugee races that had once mocked us now fled from anything marked human. One trade coalition issued a warning. Do not approach the Sol system. Do not contact its survivors. Earth is infected with madness. Good. We wanted them to be afraid. We needed them to be afraid, because fear was the only thing that had ever kept monsters away from our door. But behind the scenes,